So welcome everyone who's just joining. We're going to give people approximately 2 to 3 more minutes just to jump online. So feel free to get some water, get some coffee, whatever you need to get comfortable before we start this series on sustainability under the title of What is Sustainability Anyway? So we'll begin very shortly. Okay, so I think we can already maybe get started and just let people continue to trickle in. So thanks everyone who was on time. We always appreciate people who are prompt. And first off, welcome. This is part of the Yay Enterprising Youth series. We are kind of taking a divergence here and doing a mini series on sustainability. This is being led jointly by ITC's Youth and Trade team, which manages the Yay community, and ITC's Trade for Sustainable Development team. So this is an in-house collaboration, which we're really excited to share with you guys. We think this is going to be super useful to giving you some clarity on what is sustainability and how can you take advantage of it in your enterprise. So we're super excited to have you all here. Just some brief logistics. Please keep your microphones on mute, but feel free to share your questions in the chat box throughout the session. We will get to your questions at the end. We're planning to have approximately 15 to 20 minutes of Q&A. But if a question comes up, you can post it in the chat box whenever you like. And yeah, we're going to be sharing a brief presentation. As mentioned, if questions come up, feel free to put them in the chat box. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you guys to our experts who are going to be leading the session for you today. So we have, first off, Florence Moser, who is an advisor within the Trade for Sustainable Development team. Then we have Akshata Limay, who is a consultant within the Trade for Sustainable Development team. And then we have Mathieu Lamole, who's a senior advisor on sustainability standards and value chains within T4SD. And as usual, you have your trusted Yay community team managing the chat box, and that's Yang, Chen, and Jenny, who will be with you today. So you have a full house. And yeah, let's get things started. So I'm going to hand over the mic to Florence. So Florence, over to you.
Thank you very much, Claire. And thank you very much for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being with us today. We're super excited about this in-house collaboration as well. And so as Claire mentioned, so my name is Florence Moser, and so I work for the T4SD program here at ITC. And along with my colleagues, so Akshata Limay, who will take over the presentation later, and Mathieu Lamole, who will be here throughout and then step in as during the Q&A. So you will get to meet him a little later as well. So ITC's Trade for Sustainable Development program helps SMEs trade in a more sustainable way. And it does so through its IT platform, Sustainability Map,
Oh, we might have lost Florence for a minute. I don't know if I'm the only one who can no longer hear her.
I think you're on mute, Florence.
Oh, is it better now?
Yes, all good.
Okay, perfect. I don't know, I must have dropped off somehow. So thank you, and hello again. So I was just describing the ITC's Trade for Sustainable Development program. So it has a car offering sustainability map, which is a neutral repository of over 250 voluntary sustainability standards. And it also has capacity building projects, which you'll hear a little bit later about, and e-learning courses. So today we're thrilled to be giving you an overview of sustainability and its implications for business. So maybe why don't we go over the agenda next? If we could have the next slide, please, Claire. Perfect. Thank you very much. So as reflecting the name of the webinar today, so first we'll go into looking at what is sustainability, and then how did it become such a buzzword in business? So we'll look at a bit of an overview of its history. So starting with the emergence of complex global value chains, and also the rise of voluntary sustainability standards. Then looking at why does it matter? Why does sustainability matter? And finally, looking at sustainability, but more through the lens of MSMEs, since we have many entrepreneurs here with us today. So before we get started, we have two polls for you today. And before we launch them, so I'll just give you a little bit of background. So recently, ITC published the State of Sustainable Markets 2020 report, so that focused on 14 major sustainability standards for 8 agricultural products and forestry. And of course, you won't have read it at all, but there are some interesting findings which we can discuss and that may actually surprise you. So first, maybe Claire, if you guys could launch the polls. Perfect, thank you so much. And so the first poll is, can you guess which of the following commodities accounts for the largest certified area? And here the choices are coffee, soybeans, cotton, and palm oil. And then the second poll is about the percentage of certified area of all agricultural commodities and its growth over 4 years. So curious to see, I'll give everyone a chance to respond. And I'm curious to see what people will come up with, and stay tuned because you will get the answers later in the presentation. So, yeah. Do we already have some results, Claire?
Yes, they're still coming in. I'll just give people
Perfect.
10 more seconds.
Great. Looking forward to seeing what people thought of these two. Okay. Okay, coffee, very interesting. Okay. Great. And then poll 2. Okay. All right. Great. Very interesting. So I won't. Thank you so much, Claire, for running the polls. So we'll make a note now of the answers. And we're not going to give you the answers now, but they will come in later. This is where Akshata will come in. So thank you very much, everyone, for answering these polls. And now we're going to look at so a little bit of the word, sustainability. So many definitions of sustainability exist, as it is still quite a nebulous concept still today. So the most frequently quoted definition is the one from the United Nations 1987 Brundtland Commission, chaired by Madame Gro Harlem Brundtland, the former Prime Minister of Norway, in which defines sustainability as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So here at the Trade for Sustainable Development program, we look at sustainability as a holistic concept. So one that encompasses at least 3 pillars. So environmental, which looks at protecting the planet, it looks at soil health, so water use, etc. Social, which concerns labor rights, for example, human rights, and then economic. And that's looking at the long-term viability of the business. So looking at the sustainability of the business and its management. So as promised, we'll give you a little bit of kind of a very brief historical overview of sustainability now that we went over its definition. So Claire, if we could switch to the next slide, please. Thank you so much. So sustainability basically started coming into play around the same time that complex global value chains emerged. And complex global value chains refer to cross-border production that emerged during the 1990s as a result of trade liberalization, advances in technology and communication, and progress in logistics. So for example, we know that an iPhone's parts are manufactured by multiple companies in different countries globally. So the battery produced in China, the camera produced in Japan, and the glass screen produced in the USA. So with this new form of production, of course, the global value chains lifted many countries out of poverty, of course, but it also brought a lack of transparency and also scandals, so related to poor working conditions and environmental degradation. And Claire, if we could then switch to the next slide, please. Thank you so much. So as a result of this lack of transparency and oversight, we started seeing the rise of a wide range of sustainability tools, frameworks, and initiatives. And you may actually recognize, if we look, first of all, we look at voluntary sustainability standards. Here you have quite a few. Maybe Claire, if we also had a quick poll for you guys here as well, to see which ones you would recognize. So here we have a collage of the different labels of voluntary sustainability standards. And looking at this collage, which ones do you recognize? Which ones are you most familiar with? We're very curious to hear more from you guys on this as well. So again, we will give you a minute to take this quick poll. Perfect.
So response is still coming in. I'll just give people 15 more seconds.
Great. Thank you very much, Claire. Okay, and I can see that we still have more and more people coming in to the webinar. That's great. Oh, okay. Thank you. So here are the results. Okay, so we have UTS, actually not many people. So UTS is for coffee, cocoa, tea, and hazelnuts. And actually the UTS standard recently merged with Rainforest Alliance. So as of late 2021, you probably will see that logo a little bit less. Then we have, okay, equal for Rainforest Alliance and Fair Trade. Okay, these are definitely the big players, of course. Fair Trade actually, which covers, there's a really big variety of products covered by the Fair Trade standards. So you may be familiar with bananas, but there's also cocoa, coffee, flowers, tea, cotton, you name it. And then we have Better Cotton Initiative and FSC. So FSC covers actually a wide range of forest products. So you may have seen it on paper or paper products, or that's usually where you will see this in. And the interesting thing, what you'll notice is that some of these standards here, so they cover, their scope is very limited. For example, they cover only one product and others cover many products, probably hence why we recognize them a little more. And so to learn more about the scope and the kinds of voluntary sustainability standards, and here's a little pitch for our webinar on December 17th, tune back in. We'll have a second webinar where we'll go over we'll go a little bit more in depth in voluntary sustainability standards and their scope. So now, thanks everyone for completing this poll. We'll go, if we look back at the slides, so we have voluntary sustainability standards that emerged in the late 1980s, but we also started seeing the rise of international conventions. And such as, the UN, United Nations Guiding Principles or Global Compact. And then on the side of the private sector, we started seeing the rise of corporate social responsibility and codes of conduct. And that was actually very new. And if we go over to the next slide, then we'll also see kind of an interesting timeline. So perfect. Thanks very much, Claire. So we saw that VSS started in the late 1980s to palliate the lack of environmental and social regulations. And a key turning point occurred in 1992 when the UN Conference on Environment and Development in Rio de Janeiro really sparked a proliferation of sustainability monitoring tools, standards, and certification. So we basically started to see really kind of an explosion, of standards. And if we look at the graphs, actually the rise is very interesting to see because it's quite steep. Then over time, in the years 2000 to 2015, so multiple companies, brands, and manufacturers realized that they needed more comprehensive sustainability assurance in their respective global value chains, and that the issues around sustainability were no longer an area of competition between themselves, but rather a joint issue that should be handled collectively. And this really marks a change in the private sector's view of sustainability, because brands started seeing that they could join hands and really work on this together, that there was an advantage in working on this together. So fast forward a little bit, as global value chains evolved over the past 20 years, so have the expectations of consumers, regulators, and investors. And today, everyone expects supply chains to be efficient, traceable, and sustainable. Of course, the capabilities to satisfy these expectations have also evolved over time. And we've seen, the emergence of new technological tools to monitor sustainability. But overall, the really key shift is that recently, sustainability has really evolved from being a nice to have to being a must have. And this is where we'll switch it over to my colleague Akshata. She will now take the floor to take you through the various stakeholders that were involved in this really pivotal and decisive shift. Akshata, over to you.
Thank you, Florence, and hello, everyone. I'm extremely thrilled to be speaking to you all. Am I audible? Okay, fantastic.
Yes.
That's great. So my name is Akshata Limaye, and I also work with the Trade for Sustainable Development team here at ITC. And today I'm going to be touching upon three important issues that are relevant for our topic relating to sustainability. And namely, key stakeholders, why does sustainability matter, and the MSME perspective, really. So to pick up from where we had left on off on the earlier slide, um, uh, really to discuss the key message from the previous slide, that was sustainability has become today a must-have, and it isn't a nice-to-have requirement anymore. And we will discuss why did it happen and how did it happen. So Claire, can I please have the next slide? Thank you so much. So there have been various key stakeholders that have been involved, and rather that have contributed to this shift from a nice to have requirement to a must have, which includes consumers, NGOs, financial institutions, as well as governments. We will also be later on discussing MSMEs as one of the key stakeholders in this discussion, but a little about it later. So let's discuss these stakeholders one by one. To begin with, consumers. The consumers have become increasingly vocal about issues of sustainability. They have, in fact, even become more willing to pay extra for products and services from companies that are committed to have positive social as well as environmental impact. These changing consumption patterns have created the market for products and services that are produced and performed sustainably. Secondly, the non-governmental organizations. While consumers continue to pressurize corporations, NGOs have been advocating for fairer social and environmental practices for over decades in a organized fashion, which has brought about a lot of positive impact and positive change. Having touched upon consumers and NGOs, the next logical question that comes to us is, what about the business case for sustainability? What are the incentives for businesses to adopt sustainable practices in their business model? And the answer to that, or rather a key stakeholder which is involved in doing so, are the financial institutions. Well, the financial sector has been increasingly looking into the field of sustainability. They call it the sustainable finance, which rather integrates environmental, social, and governance criteria into business or investment decisions, which eventually benefits not only the businesses but even even the society at large. And how is this done? So this is done through various financial offerings such as sustainable funds, green bonds, impact investing, microfinance, or even credits for sustainable products. And while these private players are in picture, one of the most crucial player in this discussion are the governments. The public sector can play a very, very important role in ensuring that sustainable supply chains include adequate legal framework. It protects public interest and also underpins the responsibility of businesses to have responsible practices. And this is done by monitoring business performance, by understanding if they are complying with the regulatory frameworks which require them to be more sustainable. And in this context, I would like to share one of the recent examples of Swiss referendum that happened last weekend, which was regarding a responsible business initiative. It essentially sought to make the corporations that are headquartered in Switzerland legally liable for any environmental violation anywhere in the world. How did it happen? What it sought to essentially do was to make companies that are headquartered in Switzerland liable to be legally sued for any environmental damage that they could have caused, that could have been caused by even, say, one of the local suppliers which was located in India, perhaps. Of course, this initiative did not receive a majority support of the cantons in Switzerland. It nevertheless showed the direction in which the policymakers and the governments are thinking. And the fact that this referendum received a narrow majority from voters, it reflects the willingness of consumers today to make corporations responsible and accountable for their social and environmental footprint. So these recent trends help us in understanding where we are heading. And in this light, speaking of upcoming trends, can I request Claire to move on to the next slide, please? Thank you. So the important question of why does it matter and why are we even having this discussion today? What is sustainability anyway, right? To answer these questions, we must look at the market trends, because at the end of the day, these market trends drive the business decisions that the entrepreneurs eventually make. And before I dig a bit deeper into it, let's see what you have, what is your perspective, and let's see what you have answered in the polls that we had for you earlier today. And thank you for participating in the polls. At the beginning, Florence already spoke a little about the State of Sustainable Markets Report 2020, which essentially focused on 14 certifications across 19 different agricultural commodities. And I will share with you the highlights from that report. But as it turns out from the poll results, majority of you voted for coffee, whereas about 33% of people voted for cotton. And you would perhaps be interested to know. Thank you so much for sharing the results. We can see the results here, and we can see, or rather the results that have come about from this report is that in 2018, cotton continued to have the largest certified area. Interestingly, certified area of cotton has almost tripled from 2014 to 2018. And in the same vein, we come to the next question, where majority of you thought that that 10 to 20%. Can we have the results for the second poll, please? Okay. Anyway, so it will be interesting for you all to know that in the past 5 years, from 2014 to 2018, the certified area for all the agricultural commodities that were considered, or rather covered in this report, grew by at least half, that is over 52%. So why are we discussing these trends today, and what do these trends indicate, and why are they relevant for our discussion? As you can see, that there has been steady increase in certification, and this reflects the demand amongst the consumers, buyers, and not only them, but also the producers, to address common environmental as well as social concerns. Given the commodities that were covered in this report, these commodities are extremely important for social security, job creation, as well as human development. And therefore, there is a need to produce them in a sustainable way so that these sectors remain resilient. And although voluntary sustainability standards are present in the sectors, as we can see, and as Florence had explained earlier, there are still some challenges, such as climate change, slave labor, poor working conditions, or land grabbing issues that need to be addressed. Therefore, we can observe that there's a long road ahead, but of course, it is a work in progress. Therefore, what we can observe is that VSS, that is voluntary sustainability standards, have been monitoring and rather preventing these systemic issues all across board, and therefore creating awareness about those becomes extremely crucial. And whereas larger corporations have their own set of challenges, smaller businesses or MSMEs have their unique set of challenges that they face when it comes to mainstreaming sustainability in their production and performance, which we will highlight in the next slide. But before moving on to the next slide, I would urge you all to have a look at this report, because it will give you a lot of insight into the market trends. It will inform you a little bit more about sustainability standards and certifications that may be of interest to you. So if you click on the slide, we have provided you with a link, and you can access the report for your reading. I think it would be an interesting read, and we would like to hear your feedback on it at later some point. Feel free to write to us. And on that note, maybe we should move on to the next slide, please, Claire. Thank you. So sustainability vis-a-vis MSMEs. Given that large part of our audience today consists of MSMEs or young entrepreneurs or even budding entrepreneurs, we thought that it is imperative to look at sustainability through the lens of MSME. And not only that, but it is also important because micro, small, and medium sized enterprises, that is collectively known as MSMEs, are major contributors to the global economy. And they definitely have a direct impact on the social well-being and environmental footprint, which makes MSME an important driver and also one of the key stakeholders in addition to the other stakeholders that we discussed earlier today in sustainability, in sustainable development. We were discussing about various challenges earlier, and of course, MSMEs have their set of challenges such as market access or access to finance or how to increase the scale of their business. But in terms of sustainability, they find it, there are specific challenges such as they may find it harder to get technical assistance. They might struggle to understand which voluntary sustainability standards or certifications are relevant to them. Or there could be a sense of audit fatigue, or maybe there would be cost considerations. And that is where organizations like ITC come into picture. At ITC, we have a lot of initiatives that provide technical support and assistance to MSMEs. And amongst many other, I would like to highlight the work done through our T4SD hubs, which are located in Peru, Ghana, Laos, Vietnam, Nepal, and so on. And where we have in the past, or even potentially, we conduct various capacity building trainings around the themes of voluntary sustainability standards, certifications, resource efficiency, climate resilience, as well as accessing green finance, and so on. In addition to this work, I would like to highlight that at one of our flagship events that happened in October 2020, the Good Shade Summit, we had various discussions and deliberations with leading policymakers as well as business owners about how can we address the MSME related or MSME specific sustainability challenges. And unanimously, they emphasized on leveraging technology to address these challenges. So at a business level, what can be done, or what are different solutions available to entrepreneurs? So be it blockchain technology that can be introduced to increase transparency or traceability within the supply chain of your business, or be it e-commerce that has been instrumental in giving people the kind of market access, especially in the challenging times of the pandemic. It gave entrepreneurs an opportunity to place their products on global markets through e-markets. And not only that, but in fact, today we can see that there is huge demand for innovation and green businesses, various startups that have offered solutions that directly target or directly head-on take up the challenge of offering solutions for be it in the sector of renewable energies or addressing climate change issues, or say innovative way of packaging which reduces use of plastic, to name a few. So having said that, we look at our audience today and we in fact feel hopeful and optimistic for our future, because that is where our solutions, this is where our hopes are pinned. These solutions will help us build a more sustainable future. And on this very positive note, I would like to wrap up the discussion by summarizing various things that we discussed today, because we are also keen on hearing from you. So if we can just move on to the next slide. Thank you. This brings me to the conclusion slide of what we discussed today. We saw the evolution of the voluntary sustainability standards in parallel with how the market was changing with the rise of global value chains and globalization of production and surge in international trade. We also saw a bit of a downfall in the environmental footprint and various social issues that kept coming up, but which also gave rise to various tools that we slightly touched upon to integrate sustainability in businesses. We discussed various key stakeholders that are involved in this and the unique challenges that are faced by MSMEs, and also some solutions, some possible solutions that we can look forward to. So having said that, we would now like to hear from you. We would like to know if you have any questions, comments. You've been already writing in the Q&A box. Please continue to write and send in your questions. On this note, I would also like to invite my colleague, Matthew Lamole, who is our senior advisor at the T4SD program, to please join us in engaging with the audience today. And thank you very much, everyone, for being here. The floor is yours now. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Akshata. So we have quite a number of questions that are coming in. Maybe I think that perhaps Young and Jenny have maybe highlighted some good ones that we can pose to Mathieu to start things off. Do you guys have some questions?
Yeah, I think I noticed one from the chat box. Someone's asking how can local youth from developing countries can get involved. So I think we already mentioned, like, there's the challenges, right? Like in access to technology and information. So maybe in less developed countries, how the local youth can actually, try to improve their business and to get, more growing in a sense.
Thank you very much for the question, and hello everyone. This is Mathieu from ITC. First, maybe a big thank you to Florence and Akshata for their presentation, which was, I think, quite clear and straightforward in terms of what is actually sustainability, how can it help, what can you do with it from your business's perspective. So thanks for that. With regards to the question, I guess the challenge in dealing with sustainability standards is always this kind of disconnect between what some people are thinking would be a good solution, like mitigating climate change or ensuring human rights are respected and social and labor conditions are in place in production processes. But in the end of the day, I mean, your companies, and you're best known to know that, your companies are facing so many challenges that sustainability standards are often seen as just an additional obstacle, an additional cost, an additional burden, and why bother with it? Of course, you're agreeing with the high-level concepts of saving the planet, being fair, treating each other in a good way, and making a fair, an ethical business. At the end of the day, the standards are most coming from the north, from the buyers, from the markets where you're trying to position your products. And what we have seen is that there are some mechanisms where those local voices from developing countries are better taken into consideration in not only the design of the standard, but also the implementation of the standard. And disputes, whenever there is a dispute on the decertification or not awarding the certificate to a certain cooperative, there are some standards that perform better. But don't be naive. Some standards are only indeed check the box exercises by the big buyers to ensure that they do not run any risk from their own retailing perspective or from their own country context in the EU, in North America, in Australia, where they buy your products. Some standards are more inclusive. They work with local entrepreneurs. They work with local communities. They design programs for technical assistance and support. And this is where ITC, through the different programs that we are running in T4SD, in the youth entrepreneurs community that you have, that we are trying to help you get a better voice, that you are heard, and you can take part in consultation processes. So there is no magical answer, no magical button to this issue, but you can at least count on ITC to help you to get your voices heard, and also to help you also navigate this jungle of standards, private standards that are sometimes there to really help, and you really can be excellent tools to position your products in the market. And sometimes they are de facto additional requirements that you unfortunately would have to deal with if you deal with a buyer that requires the standard and the certificate. Then there is no choice. But whenever you have the choice, at least count on ITC to help you select which is the best choice to make.
Thank you. I think we got another question from the chat box asking the factor played by the culture. So basically asking, is there like any differences, say, between different cultures? As you already mentioned, like there's no universal definition for sustainability. Yeah, thank you.
It's a good question. I'll ask Akshata to say a few words about it, but also before and starting from my side, most of the time you would have a standard that has an international definition of, you know, what they try to achieve, the mission, the requirements, and the process to get the certificate. And then there is, it's not a cultural adaptation, but mostly a local adaptation based on where the standard is applied. So if the standard is applied in Africa, Ghana, it's going to be probably slightly differently applied in Colombia, Peru, or Brazil, even though the product could be the same. It could be coffee, it could be cotton, it could be palm oil. So there are local adaptations. On the culture side, some standards are taking this into consideration when, you know, producing their requirements, but some others are, again, as I was saying before, some can be just a single type hurdle question that applies everywhere in the world in the same way. I don't know, Akshata, if you wanted to add something on this.
Oh, thank you, Matthew. I think that's basically the point. And also just to add on to it, we use certain terms just because it sort of creates a universal language, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we need to be trapped in any kind of a definition per se. As Florence had already highlighted, that there are various pillars that we need to take into consideration that fall under the definition of sustainability, that provide us with like a broader understanding of what would be the social issues that sustainability encompasses, or what could be the environmental issues that that sustainability encompasses. And as Matthew suggested, that how we implement it would at the end of the day depend on which country or which region are we looking at, which product or which sector are we looking at. So of course, there could be slight changes or slight differences in terms of the applicability of various criterions that need to be considered in terms of compliance. But sustainability as a whole is a very broad concept, and that needs to be that needs to be the larger vision, rather, I would say. Florence, would you like to add something to it, or maybe we can have the next question?
I'm good. Thank you so much, guys. You did a great job of summarizing everything. So I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, so one more question is actually regarding the agriculture specifically. So asking how can we actually ensure innovative, sustainable solutions for agriculture production? Maybe just briefly explain. Thanks.
In the sense of agriculture, there are tremendous changes that are taking place. There is a lot of innovation coming through. We've seen recently remote sensors using satellites to analyze the soil health of certain areas on Earth. So you have those kind of very high technological innovations that happen. And in some countries, they are more used than others. It's of course always a question of resources. If you take water, irrigation, and Israel, and all these points together, you can see that this is a tremendous issue for that country, and they have invested lots of money with American support into satellite technology to identify where best to produce and where best to use water resources. Now, this technology is getting into the more mainstream when we look at sub-Saharan African, less than in the northern part of Africa, but there are some technologies being used as well in agriculture, trying to promote sustainability in the sense of better uses of the resources, water, soil, fertilizers, natural fertilizers, not only chemicals, and using new techniques to actually harvest with higher yields. So agriculture, in a way, has to be more sustainable, not just for the sake of it, but also for the productivity, right? And it's by combining the right measures and resources that we can see that happening. It does not always entail using high-level technological innovation like those satellites images I was mentioning before. This is an area that we have seen in the last 3-4 years that has really skyrocketed in terms of technologies being used on the planet. Some hotspots in some countries like Israel more than others, but it's something to keep an eye on. But there are certain things that farmers and cooperatives can do in a very practical way without technology, but still making sure that there are those concepts of something which is very new, and I recommend everyone to look at it on the internet. Is called regenerative agriculture. And that is a lot to do with carbon sequestration into the soil and rotating the crops so that it's not always producing the same thing that actually gives away the productivity of the soil because of certain bad practices. And if we don't know, we just produce as usual. But by just implementing a few guidance of keeping a diversity of cultures and keeping a rotation, and also ensuring that the soil is not seen just as a, let's say, an entrant into the production, but something that is living with all the insects, all the biodiversity that is in there. And by keeping an eye on it, you enhance your sustainability, you enhance a lot of the practices that even if you do not have a certificate, you will be closer to receiving a certificate when you have, let's say, a buyer looking at the fields and what you're doing. So on that, again, there are some basic requirements that you can follow that are not costly, that are not requiring huge investments. And again, ITC is there to help you identify, based on your sector and your country, what could be those paths. So again, back to the call that Florence and Akshata have said before, get in touch with us. We are there to help. Agriculture is a fascinating area that has changed so much over the last years, from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and just even 5 years ago, with those new concepts of seeing agriculture as a continuity of living habitats for biodiversity, plus of course everything you want to produce for the business. So it's a fascinating area. We could talk about it for hours, and I know we don't have so many hours, but that to say, the door is very much open for further discussions with us.
Claire, I'm not so sure. I can see quite a few questions coming up from the audience, but I also noticed the time.
Let's take one final question, Yang. Pick a good one.
Okay, I think I noticed one very interesting from a different perspective, like say in the transition to sustainable business, like the resistance, maybe the potential resistance from the employees, like any insights or advice on that?
Maybe I can say a few words and then give the floor back to Florence, who I know is also very sensitive on this. But basically, resistance from employees, it also goes with the question about culture that we had before. And a company that is healthy, a company that is good business, it actually attracts good employees as well. So if a company is mainstreaming, producing, let's say, textiles, t-shirts, or products like coffee, mango, You do that in a traditional way, and that's totally fine. But when the company engages onto the road of sustainability, it actually creates extra stimulus for mostly employees, seeing that their company is not just a company, it's actually a nice company to work with. So resistance from employees, it's interesting to ask the question, I mean, where would the resistance be coming from? I'll give you just one example. If you are in charge of making the business as profitable as possible, and then you have the company that starts becoming more sustainable and that requires an investment, then your profit will probably go down in the first stage. They will go up after, but in the first stage, they are here. And if you as an employee, you need your bonus at the end of the year, and you see this trend here, your bonus will probably be smaller this year, and you may be against it, and that creates the resistance. However, I would really see the long-term perspective of a business that encompasses sustainability and sees it not only as an investment, but also as a way to keep all the employees extremely happy, satisfied, and even actually staying even more close to that enterprise. Florence, please, would you like to say a few more?
No, thanks, Matthew. I think it's a really interesting question, as you said. I think buy-in is extremely important. So having buy-in when you do start, you want to take on the sustainability journey, I think it is super important to have the support of your employees. So really having them there from the beginning, maybe even in the implementation of a sustainability plan, so they really feel ownership of it. And then also having buy-in as well from senior management as well. And that's also crucial because you need the support if you're going to make those changes. So you need kind of this vertical and horizontal support. And I think that's definitely something to take into account at the beginning. And that's one more reason to engage your employees and your senior management from the beginning and have them also have a say in the sustainability plan. Thanks. Really interesting question. Back to you, Claire. And
Great.
yeah.
Yes. So we're going to close it up. We went a little bit over time, but we really appreciate everyone sticking with us. And as I've just mentioned in the chat, feel free to post your name, your company, and your email. Let's make this useful. We know we're all interested in sustainability here. And I wanted to just share a final slide with you all. We're super thankful that the T4SD team has helped us on this presentation. And FYI, guys, there's 3 more episodes coming up in this mini series on sustainability. But here in front of you, you have everyone's contact email, ITC website, and also the sustainability map URL, which we've mentioned quite a few times throughout this discussion. So take note of it. Just FYI, also, this presentation will be live on the Yay community website in our resources page. So all of this information will be available to you guys after as well. We'll also have the recording there. So don't worry, Young, if you can post a link to the Yay community. If you're not already on the Yay community, be sure to create your account so that you can liaise with all of these other young entrepreneurs, direct message, and of course, tap into the resources which we've shared with you today. And finally, just going to share with you guys one last slide, which is basically be sure to attend our next session, which will take place on the 17th of December. We've moved it up 1 hour, so we hope you can all join. If you go ahead and scan the QR code in the corner, you can just be taken directly to the registration page. So we really look forward to having you guys all involved on the 17th of December as we discuss navigating the sustainability map, this tool which has been created by the T4SD to support your business. So as mentioned in this presentation, there's tons of tools available out there. Sometimes it can be quite overwhelming how to use them. So this episode, we're going to break down exactly what the tool provides and how to use it. So be sure to sign up, don't miss it. Going to keep this screen up for you guys, but that's the end of the session for today. Thanks so much. And we look forward to having you guys all here on December 17th. Please feel free to share the registration link with those in your network that you think it might be interesting for. So thanks everyone, and see you on the 17th. Have a good rest of your day. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
a lot.